Hi, everyone, and welcome to another Home Tech. I'm Seth Johnson, and Jason Griffin is back from his vacation. What's going on, Jason?
I am, yeah. Happy to be here. How are you?
Well, glad to have you back. You ready to talk a little bit about Sonos?
I don't know that there's anything left to say.
Yeah, maybe we could talk about HomeKit or Nest or Echo.
Right. Yeah, you did a great job on the show last week. I was, as you alluded to, off enjoying a nice vacation with my family. We went up to Steamboat Springs here in Colorado. Really beautiful part of the state, beautiful part of the country, and just enjoyed some relaxing time with my parents and brother and sister and nieces and nephews. So really good time, and happy to be back, though. Feeling rested and ready for a good show here.
Yeah, I saw pictures flying by on, I think on your Facebook, and man, it looked like everybody was having a great time, but the weather looked incredible. Like, you must have had some great weather then.
Yeah, we got lucky. You know, this time of year, late June, kind of early July up in the mountains, it can be a little bit iffy. A lot of afternoon thunderstorms typically, but we really didn't have much of that to contend with, thankfully. So really good weather, and like I said, really good time.
All right, well, cool. It's good to have you back. Let's jump into the show, man. There's a lot to talk about this week. First up, you had a new baby.
Well, not quite yet. That's in about a month, but yeah.
Right. A real one.
A real baby,
one.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're alluding to a CE Pro story that came out, a peek inside Jerry Bruckheimer's Barco home cinema, and that was a theater that I was happy to be the project manager on, and that was back towards the end of my time with VIA out there in Los Angeles, and definitely an immensely challenging project, but really a nice feather in my cap, I feel like, and it was cool to see the story come out and see it get some of that public attention. It was a very cutting edge project, obviously, as you can imagine, and a lot of different angles and challenges involved with that. So I was happy to see it getting some coverage in CE Pro, and had to give myself a little pat on the back for that.
Yeah, and if anybody is a long time listener to the show, I just did a search. I found it. It was episode number 48. So HomeTech.fm/48. We've actually got a picture that you took and posted of this massive thing, and I think we talked a fair bit about it on the show too.
We did.
Yeah,
we did.
It was pretty far along. I mean, from a design standpoint and a layout and installation standpoint, when you were dealing with it, by far. I mean, you probably were on that type of project a third of the way through, I would say, and then there's a ton of work that goes into like the little final details and trim on one of those.
Yeah. It's the term home theater gets used, I think, fairly loosely these days, which is fine. I have no issue with that. But this truly was a theater. It was the same caliber, actually the same exact type of equipment that you would find if you were to walk into the back of a Harkins or any professional cinema in your local town there. We were dealing with the same stuff. So same projection equipment, same type of servers, audio processors, all that sort of thing. So there's a ton of work that goes into that. Like I said, I was the project manager on it, and on a project like that, the only way it gets done is with a really dedicated team. There's a ton of people involved. We had a gentleman, Ryan Brown, with Paradise Theaters, who some of our integrator friends who are listening will probably be familiar with.
Oh, yeah.
That company. They do a lot of really high-end theater design, and so they did the whole design of the room, and we had a company out in L.A. that we used a lot called Fantastic Theater, I believe was the name, and they were they're like a fully licensed general contractor. Very interesting business model, because he's a fully licensed general contractor, but all he does is builds very high-end theaters. So he was really in charge of, acoustically isolating the room and building the shell. And then Jerry Bruckheimer himself has very close ties with Barco. So there was people from Barco coming out there and looking at the room and helping to specify some of the equipment. And then on the audio side, we had a big JBL synthesis system that went in there. And with a project that's this high caliber, everybody's kind of putting out their A-team and really wants everything to go well. And not that there weren't any bumps in the road, but certainly the project came together very nicely. And just a ton of stuff going on in that room between the combination of professional cinema equipment and then making it integrate with consumer equipment as well. And that was one of the big challenges we faced on the programming and control side was how to deal with controlling professional cinema equipment that's not designed to be controlled by an end user. These systems are not designed with that sort of person in mind. And so very challenging. We had a really good savant programmer, a good friend of mine named Nolan on the project, and he really worked hard to get it all to come together. So really cool project. And I definitely, when I saw the story come out, wanted to plug it on the show and encourage people to go check out that article if they haven't read it yet.
Yeah. And I think back on our show, we, between you and I, we knew who it was, but I don't think we announced who it was. And you've said it was Jerry Bruckheimer, the famous director at this point. I mean, he has to have, I mean, this has got to be integral to what he does as a director. Like he could get into his theater and actually screen films that he's actually shooting right now.
Yep. Yeah, and exactly.
This is kind of a reference theater almost, I guess, for doing, doing his trade, doing his craft. So, as crazy as it sounds to have one of these, and I'm sure the price tag, I skimmed the article, I didn't see it, but I did see that he had, topped $13 billion in most, with all of his films. I think price probably wasn't really a factor, although as you and I both know, it budgets are always on projects. So,
oh yeah. Yeah. That was definitely something I learned, working in that sort of market where it really is, the highest end projects out there. I mean, there are other markets, obviously, both here in the States and internationally, where they're on par with LA and Beverly Hills, but you're not going to find areas where it's much higher. That really is kind of the biggest projects out there. And even on those, budget is a concern. Now it's all relative, of course. So when you're talking about a budget that's going to concern somebody like Mr. Bruckheimer, that's very different than a budget that would concern somebody like me, obviously. But it was interesting to see that dynamic and also, a little inside baseball, but a lot of the equipment that went into that, some of the Barco equipment and stuff like that, it's not like going out and buying a projector at Best Buy or something. It's very highly specialized, and Barco is very incentivized to be able to say, hey, we are the projection provider for the personal home cinema of Jerry Bruckheimer. There's value in that, and so they offer very, very good deals. He got some really good deals on that stuff, I happen to know, and probably not at liberty and wouldn't feel appropriate really discussing what the budget was, but needless to say, it was a significant amount and wasn't the primary driver. This was very much a performance-driven room. Eric Thies, a former boss of mine, was quoted extensively in the article. He was the one who sold the job and one of the former owners of DSI and a principal in VIA. And, I thought he had a great quote in the article when he said that building a room like this for Jerry Bruckheimer is kind of like designing a set of golf clubs for Tiger Woods. And I thought that was a great analogy because you really are, you're designing a room, like you said, for somebody who does this as a profession at the highest level out there. And so everything has to be considered. Yeah,
no doubt. And this is what turned out actually to be a very good looking room and a very tasteful looking room. I've seen some of these theaters, they're definitely designed to be over the top, but this one looks very respectable and something that looks very comfortable to go into and watch a movie. And I really love it when I see that because so to me, it's not, the show off room. It's a very, utility driven room more than anything, even though it's very high performance.
Yep. Yeah. I thought that, they did a good job on the design, and I agree with you. I thought it was tasteful. It wasn't, I'll admit my style, if I had that kind of budget to build a room, I don't know that is the exact look that I would go for, but it was very classic, and it went with the rest of the house. This was, I should mention, one part of a larger project that I was managing, where he was, renovating this entire, I don't even know. I think it was about probably 12,000 square feet, could have been even bigger. Big home in Beverly Hills. And so this was one aspect of the project, and there was a whole rest of the house with automation and TVs and music everywhere that we were also dealing with. So very challenging project, a lot of moving parts. But the look of the theater is very consistent with the rest of the house, very kind of classic design, really just I thought very tastefully done. Not, like I said, necessarily my first choice of style, but I can totally see the appeal and why somebody would go with that sort of a look.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's cool to finally see what the end result was. I've been kind of hoping that after VIA went away, somebody would pick up the project, and it looks like, so DSI was one of the original companies that was part of VIA.
Correct.
Right? And they got rolled in. So they obviously were the ones that came in I'm sure, after VIA kind of dissolved and were able to, since they had so much knowledge and IP on that project, I'm sure they were able to come in and say, we would like to finish this out. And I'm glad that somebody did, because that's, and we get to see what the end result looks like, because I remember talking about that, and that was 2015. We recorded that show. So here we are in 2016. Let's see. I don't think it was over a year. Oh yeah, over a year later. That's how long these projects can take. So,
yep.
I'm glad to see the final result.
Yeah, definitely. Very cool. Well, let's move on here. We got a few more news stories we're going to cover this week. No guest joining us this week. Just going to be you and me, Seth, and a couple of stories here. Big acquisitions. I feel like this has really been the year of mergers and acquisitions, and we've been talking about that quite a bit. But these were fairly large companies that I would have, particularly with one of them, would have expected them to be the ones doing the acquiring, but it was the other way around. And so the first one we want to touch on is Avid was acquired by a company called Kingswood Capital Management, and don't know much about them, but it does look like they are committed to continuing along with the brand and trying to improve it. And they've put a leadership team in place that seems consistent with that message. And it doesn't look like Avid is going to go anywhere, which I think is good news. Particularly, obviously, Avid has, I think the article mentioned, like 10,000 integrator companies that they're working with across the country. And so very large footprint. Company that I've worked with extensively. I think they provide a very valuable service in terms of home technology professionals. So I will be hopeful that they can stick around and keep doing their thing. And hopefully this will be nothing but an improvement for them.
Yeah. And if anybody doesn't really know what Avid is, if you're an integrator, it's probably a name that it's definitely a name you've seen, because I think they, like you said, they have a really large footprint. And in most markets, they had a local office where they would sell at wholesale products, like receivers and wire and cable terminations and that kind of thing, remotes, TV mounts, all that good stuff. This is our supply house. And I know I think the nearest branch to us was in Tampa, which, it's about a 45-minute drive for us. So we never really made it up there very often. I think the only branch they have left in Florida is over on the East Coast somewhere, which is about a 3-hour drive. So we never see much of them anymore.
That's a long way to drive for like a box of wire.
Yeah, there are some local distributors and wholesalers and larger. Even larger companies like Graybar, which is a large and Rexel, very large electrical supply house that we would go and buy product at. So it's an interesting story to see this kind of going back and forth. They were acquired by Ingram, which is a massive logistics company back in 2005, and I'm not sure what happened there. It's kind of interesting to see them pulled back out of Ingram and sold back off to an equity firm. It's kind of interesting to me. I wonder if that says, maybe they weren't doing as well as they should have been doing. I don't know.
Yeah, you always wonder when you see these sort of deals, is it a sign of a company that's doing very well and were just an appealing target, or is it a sign of a company maybe that was struggling a little bit and needed a big infusion of capital in order to, kind of stay on track? And you never really know. That would be obviously speculation for me to even try to guess at that. But like I said, they did put a leadership team in place that does seem to have a good track record in the industry. They're not names that I was familiar with when I first read them, but gentleman by the name of Tom Jacoby will be the new CEO, and he was previously the CEO of Harman Consumer Group and a director at Klipsch Group, big speaker manufacturer. And then Fred Farrar is going to be the new president, and he looks like maybe more the the money guy, investment management background. Says he was instrumental in helping Klipsch grow from 13 million to 220 million in revenue back in, I think, like the 90s and early 2000s. And so a common connection there with Klipsch. I don't know how much there is to that aspect of the story, but they do seem like two gentlemen with a strong pedigree in consumer electronics and home technology, and I think that bodes well for the company.
Yeah, and another thing we saw in the article, it was kind of a bullet point that we both pulled out of it was they're going to focus on web-enabled technology, which we both said almost at the exact same time. They've got to compete with Snap AV.
Yep, because trying to play catch up.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Snap AV is another massive wholesaler for the custom integration market. They have their own set of products in just about every key category, and they do extremely well if for only one reason, and that's having product available. Now, this sounds crazy to be talking about in 2016, but having a product available on an online store that ships within, the same day.
Yeah.
And you get shipping confirmation and tracking information.
It sounds so bad when you say that.
Well, I mean,
it's true though.
There's still
it's
distributors
true.
that do not have an online presence where you email off a list of parts and pieces to someone at their office. They email you back saying, "Oh yeah, we can get this to you," and you may have to wait a couple more days before you get tracking on it. I mean, if you get tracking at all, it just could just show up with an invoice. So, I mean,
no, it's very true, and it just surprises me because we work in a high tech industry, but Snap AV has been the leader, in my opinion, in terms of just making it easy for dealers to buy their stuff. And if anyone listening is not familiar, Snap AV, I think it's fair to say in the industry has kind of a mixed feelings about it in the industry. I think some people look at it and think, maybe really cheap stuff. And I disagree. I think Snap AV, we use a lot of their stuff. I think they make some really great product. I think they make it really easy for us as a home technology company to get parts, get them quickly, research stuff easily on their website. Actually, coincidentally, just got an email, via their email list from Adam Levy, I believe is the gentleman's name, one of the founders. Sent out an email just kind of notifying Snap AV dealers about some upcoming improvements to the website. And the gist of the email is, why would we update the website? We've already got the best, website in the industry, which, for what they do, I would agree with. But it does sound like they're even working harder to continue improving it. And he talked about some of the features that they're going to be adding on there that will make it even better. And so I think that other distributors and manufacturers should really be paying attention to what Snap AV is doing, because as a home technology professional, I've got enough challenges to deal with, and time is always at a premium, and I just don't have the bandwidth or the resources to, spend a lot of time chasing down parts or placing purchase orders. I need things to be easy, and I need them to be quick. We've got a million different SKUs that we've got to deal with as home technology professionals, so anything that a company can do to make that process a little bit easier is super important, and hopefully Avid can follow in those footsteps, because I think the more companies that start to take that seriously will be better for everyone.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the two major complaints that I have in this industry are, one, the price sheets that we get, they are only ever available in PDF. I don't understand why. Like, I have to take a PDF with maybe 300 SKUs on it and transpose everything over into a database. Like, just give me the Excel sheet that you made this PDF with.
Yeah.
But they can't do that. Forget it. And then, I made this joke before, but back when Snap AV first started up and you were getting those complaints of them having, cheap products and blah, 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 by the people who were selling against them, turns out, I was still sending faxes and purchase orders. I had a distributor that would not take anything from us but a fax. You'd have to fax something over.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So this was, only a half dozen years ago. I mean, to think about how far we still haven't come. And I say that, like, what Snap AV does is very tough to do. Like, you've seen Amazon do it, but you haven't seen very many other companies besides Amazon pull off what they do logistics-wise. Snap AV is kind of the Amazon of our industry in the respects of logistics. Like, when you place an order, you know if the stuff is in stock and it gets shipped. And that is extremely hard to do. Avid tried to do it once, probably about 10 years ago. And they didn't do so well. And I think that's when they went to Ingram to use their back end and logistics. And now I'm just really curious to see what they end up with, and how well it works out for dealers in the field.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, like I alluded to, there was a second big acquisition that came right on the heels of the Avid news. And I would say an even more surprising acquisition, and that is Nortech being acquired. And this does not look like good news. I guess what I'm trying to say is I would not want to be an employee of Nortech right now.
Right. This was a bombshell, and it just hit this morning. Shocking. I mean, Nortech is an extremely large company. They own a ton of brands that are inside of what they call core brands, which are more integrator focused, like Elan, Geffen, Speakercraft, Niles, Panamax. But they also own 2GIG, which is a massive alarm panel company, and more consumer facing brands like Broan and Newtone, which, I go to Home Depot and I was looking around for, a bathroom exhaust fan. I bought a Newtone. And they had two options between Home Depot and Lowe's. It was one had Newtone and one had Broan, and I'd go between the two, and they were the exact same thing. They were just boxed differently.
different logos.
Yeah. But I mean, to think about like Nortech being acquired, and not only acquired, but acquired to be broken up and sold off from this investment firm, is just kind of scary to me, because these are it's kind of hokey to call them core brands, but for a lot of integrators, these are core brands of their business.
Yeah, and this company, Melrose, is the name of the company that acquired them. I mean, you go to their website and you look at the very top where their logo is across the top there, and part of their logo right there says buy, improve, sell. And so that's what these guys do. They buy companies, they improve them, and improve typically, when you're talking about these sort of things, typically means a lot of people lose their jobs. There's overhead slashed and properties that are sold and who knows what else. And so I think this is not good news for anyone who works at Nortech. I think that the company is probably in for a pretty rough ride here. And I'm not trying to cast Melrose as a villain here. I think companies like Melrose play an important part in our economy. And if Nortech is a company that is presumably, like we talked about with the Avid story, I would assume Nortech was probably a company that was struggling a little bit. And I think that in the long run, this was probably something that was likely to happen eventually. And it's just surprising, though. Like you said, Nortech is a very big company, and don't want to speculate on the reasons for the acquisition, but all of the coverage that I've read alludes to the fact that probably within 2 to 3 years, the company will really be kind of broken down, repackaged. Maybe parts of it will be sold to different people, and who knows? I think that
it's Pretty Women all over again.
Didn't see that one coming.
It's Richard Gere. Yeah, this is what he did. This is what he did in the show, and then he met what's her name? Julie Roberts. Yeah, so
I just didn't expect a Pretty Woman reference in tonight's show.
Oh, there you go.
Anyways, let's move on. We got a few more stories that we want to cover here, and one is I want to give a quick nod to Residential Systems, and just mention a piece that I put up for them this week that I think is pretty interesting story, and not one, Seth, that we've really talked much about on the show, but something I've been keeping a fairly close eye on in the background. And that is this movement, Unlock the Box, and then there's kind of a counter movement called Ditch the Box. And it all really has to do with the future of the cable box as we know it, and we can get into some of the details, but the short version is a proposal by the FCC to open up cable boxes to basically force pay TV manufacturers to open up some streams of information that would allow third-party manufacturers to produce cable boxes, with the goal of getting consumers away from being trapped into leasing a cable box from their provider. That move has, to no one's surprise, been met with a bit of resistance, particularly from the cable companies, who have come up with a counter proposal that they're calling Ditch the Box, which basically focuses on forcing pay TV companies with over 1 million subscribers to develop a HTML5 app that consumers could then use on a device of their choosing. So I think there's pros and cons to both of those movements. I think it's a pretty fascinating story, and anyone who's interested in learning a little bit about it, the piece I put up is just sort of a quick overview of what's been going on. This has been kind of brewing here since I believe about February of this year. So it's been a number of months. It's been kind of an ongoing thing, and I think an interesting one to watch.
Yeah. It's. I mean, striking close to home. I eventually will cut off my cable. Probably over the weekend. I've got a new TiVo, which after much thinking about and trying to figure out how I was going to continue to watch TV in the future, the TiVo just turned out to be the best box. On top of that, when I called TiVo, they made me a really good deal. And this is why I love TiVo, and I hope they never go away. They gave me a great deal on getting a new or refurbished Romeo, and then they also allowed me to transfer the license from my current player over to the new one with no fees or no increase in the contract. So I was super happy with that, and glad that I'm a TiVo customer. But it sounds like either way this goes, we may not even have the need for a TiVo box in the future. This might go down, if it goes down with the ditch the box people. I mean, if it's an open architecture HTML5 app, that could be played anywhere on your phone. It could be played on a tablet or a compatible smart TV. And you're just launching apps at that point. You would launch your Comcast app or your Time Warner app, and that would be the gateway into your TV experience.
Yeah, and I don't think it's going too far out on a limb to say that someday what we're going to have is a TV that you hang up on the wall and you plug in an Ethernet cable and maybe power, or maybe it gets PoE, and that's it. There are no boxes. I think that is the future. The question is, how long does it take for us to get there? And I think that ultimately all of the switching and all of that is going to be done in the cloud, on the servers, wherever it needs to happen. And the future of having dedicated set-top boxes, I think those days are numbered. Like I said, it's only a question of by how long. I think that the unlock the box idea is good in principle. I think it would be nice to have some more options there and be able to get away from using cable boxes that are often antiquated hardware and very prone to issues and lockups and things like that. And so I think that it's good. The reasoning behind it is good. I don't know how much need I really see for the FCC to be coming in and dictating that. I think the market is already doing that, and we're already starting to see more of that happening with just the move over to apps. And I think that eventually that's where we're going anyways. I don't think that we necessarily need the FCC to mandate that. But either way, I think that home technology professionals and consumers will come out ahead on this, no matter which way it ends, because the like I said, cable boxes as we know them now are very prone to issues and not a piece or a category of device in particular that I'm very fond of. No,
I think as integrators, we all have our horror stories of controlling horrible cable boxes and their horrible UIs. I think they've done a lot better recently. Comcast has done their X1 platform.
Which is a nice interface. I would agree with you.
Yeah, and they even have like a voice control remote that's shipping along with it now, which you can do some minor searches with it. But as far as integration goes, it seems to be a decent platform to be on. Now, I would still choose TiVo any other over any one of these things any other day. But of course, when I run TiVo, I have to have a cable card, and this is the cable company's previous suggestion, and they never worked. They never supported it fully. So whatever they do, whether it's unlock or ditch, like I think everybody has to be on the same table. Like it all has to be the same thing. They can't have these cable cards that aren't half supported by the cable manufacturer, the cable companies themselves. And you have third-party boxes like TiVo, or in the future maybe it's Roku and Apple TV. If Comcast or Time Warner implement some special HTML5 widget that they're supposed to put on there, they have to cooperate and make it available across the board if that's what they're talking about doing. And I mean, the nightmares that I've had with cable cards over the years, I do not want to have to repeat with whatever widgets, HTML5 programs or whatever we're running on smart TVs. Like oh man, I don't want to go down that road.
Yeah. So definitely a story worth paying attention to. Let's jump here to the next story, and that is one in particular, Seth. I think you had some interesting thoughts about that we were sharing before we hit record here tonight, and this was a piece on CE Pro, the marketing challenges of remote controls and home automation. And I think the gist of it was very interesting to me. It's a theme that we've talked about on the show here before numerous times, and that is essentially has to do with trying to bridge this gap or make this crossover from home automation into control of the living room, and vice versa, how to go back the other way for companies that have started by controlling the living room or the media room. Companies like Logitech comes to mind and is cited heavily in the article, and are now trying to be perceived as more of a home automation company. And the perception, I think, with the average consumer is that those are two very different things, and it's a bit of a challenge for companies to get around that.
Yeah, this article by Julie Jacobson over at CE Pro, after I read it, it raised more questions than it answered. And she talks about early on, like if you go to the average, home automation Joe on the street and ask them, hey, what's the name of a hub? They would reach over, they would ring the bell, and then they would say, oh, I saw the Wink there. I've been hearing a lot of good things about that. I saw that SmartThings was picked on Wirecutter to be the best do-it-yourself home automation hub. They may mention Lowe's Iris or the Vera, if they're pretty techie. But they may not mention Harmony. And Harmony does a ton of things with home automations. It works with Nest. It will integrate with your Lutron Casetas or Lutron system. I think it's more than Caseta these days. It will integrate with a number of other lighting devices like Philips Hue. It is a hub. I mean, by any definition, it is a home automation hub. But for whatever reason, the consumer thinks about it as just a remote control for their TV. And after I read this article, I sat there and I thought about I have this exact same problem with customers when I'm talking with them about Control 4. I'll throw a Control 4 remote to control the AV system into a project, and it's just what we use because it's a decent price point, and it gets the job done. Programming is fast. As an integrator, it does everything I need it to do, and it has the ability to control other devices in the house or integrate with other devices in the house. And when I mention that to my customers, I say, the first thing I say is, we're using this universal remote control, so you don't have to worry about having 4 remotes on the coffee table. All you see is your TV on the wall and 1 remote. Okay, that's great. I love it. The next breath out of, the next thing that I say is it can integrate with the lights, and you control your thermostat. You can raise up and down the shades, and it's almost as like a different mindset happens. Like they think that it's going to be more complicated than reducing those 4 remotes down to 1, and they think it's going to be more, much more expensive. Which it can be. Like if you did your entire house, you did everything, automated everything in your house, it can be pretty expensive, but it doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't negate the fact that the product that we're putting in will do all of that and more. And I find it an interesting quandary to be in for these home automation systems that offer AV device control as well as home automation. To be in this situation where they are perceived as only a TV remote because of the form factor their product exists in. And I don't know what to think about it. I think whoever cracks the nut of being able to market the device as being a hub and a remote control for the house, for the AV system, is really going to make a lot of money. But I don't think anybody has done that yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that it was an interesting piece. It was never, it wasn't one that I would have ever thought to write myself. Like, I would have never sat down to give it that level of thought. But after I read it, I said to myself, well, yeah, it's insightful. I think that a lot of it just has to do with the fact that it is a new crossover, so to speak, and that, like, I mean, sometimes as home technology professionals, I feel like we forget that we do serve a pretty small segment of the market overall, and there's not a huge swath of the general population that has been exposed to the services we provide. And for a long time, we've had the ability to sell the systems that you alluded to that can do all of your AV control, your TV control, as well as your full home automation. But it's only in the last couple of years that we've started to see more mainstream awareness through all of the things that, you know, we've talked about, Smart Things and Wink and Nest, and the list goes on and on. And so I just think that because we've seen a lot of those new products come to market with a focus on temperature control and controlling your lights and maybe smart locks and window contact sensors and things like that, we just haven't seen a lot of those companies really make an extended push into doing living room control. And so I think a lot of people do still see the universal remote and home automation and, you know, the Internet of Things as two very separate sort of technologies in their minds. And I think it's just going to take some time for the market to see those as the same thing. And I think that's just a result of the fact that we haven't seen a lot of these more mainstream companies cross that divide just yet. You know, when you talk about the Nests and the HomeKits of the world, you know, those conversations typically revolve around more pure home automation, smart home type of technology, and you just don't hear much, if anything, about controlling the media room. So I think it's just a matter of time, but I did think that there were some insights in the piece, definitely worth reading if you haven't taken a look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Guess what?
What? Oh.
It works.
Well, you're going to get people excited, but we don't have a new hub to tease here. What we do have is a new service that can help you understand the difference between home automation and living room control. And if you want somebody to come explain that to you, I could think of no better person than a marginally paid, marginally trained Best Buy employee.
Absolutely. The Geek Squad is going to be doing a free in-home consultation service where the staff will offer advice about how your tech goals, such as home automation and multi-room audio, can be reached. And I think this is exciting for Best Buy because they're going to realize what we as integrators had to realize years ago. The clients are going to come in and they're going to ask them all these questions, and Best Buy is going to tell them what they need, and they're going to go online and buy it.
Yep. Exactly.
Which is clearly the key. You know, one of the goals of this program is to stem that surge of online purchases and get people from stopping from going online after they do their shopping in the brick and mortar stores. I don't know. This is going to be a fine line they're going to have to walk with this one.
Yeah, I don't see it really going anywhere significant. I don't want to sound overly snarky. You know, I think there are people out there, I think particularly of maybe people like my parents or that generation who's not as immersed in this sort of technology, or maybe not even aware that it exists. And I think that a company like Best Buy, who's very front of mind and very, it's the first company, like if recently, for example, my mom, with Father's Day having just passed, she bought a Sonos unit for my dad. And so it was his first one, and she didn't really know anything about it. And so, of course, she called me because I work in the industry. But I think, if it weren't for that, if it weren't for a son that works in the industry, I think probably her first call would have been to a company like Best Buy, just because they are front of mind. And so I think there are segments of the market and the population that this could potentially be a valuable service for. But I just, like you sort of alluded to, I have a hard time seeing Best Buy really be able to execute on it. And I think what's likely to happen is what you said, and people will just use it to get some free advice and then go do some online shopping anyways.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest problem they have is the free portion to it, because it means there's no value in the advice that they're offering. And I've always discouraged, integrators, if you go out and do a consultation, you should charge a little money for it. Even if you do give that money back on the backside, like you credit it back towards the purchase. What we do is kind of crazy. And I say that as I did an entire hour show or 45-minute show on the ins and outs of how to set up a Sonos system.
Right.
I mean, the device is out there for free if somebody wants to go find it. Like if your mom wanted to listen to me ramble on about how to set up a Sonos system, she could have done that. But I think the less friction there is, that's what most people will take that route and go with it. But I think they're probably going to end up losing a little bit more money on this than they are going to gain customers, especially because most people that will take advantage of something like this, I think will end up going out and just taking the information and finding it, whatever products they're selling, less online somewhere.
Yeah, and I think that's true. And I think that the types of customers and that Best Buy is going to cater to and the type of products that they're trying to sell, I don't think necessarily support from a business perspective that idea of going out and doing a whole bunch of free consultations. I think it's interesting to hear that you are not a proponent of that. I think, here in our market, it's kind of the de facto, it's the normal thing to do, and would be tough to charge for. I totally see your point. I think it's valid. We do free consultations all the time. But at the same time, we are a fairly high-end company. We're not exclusively high-end, and we do a lot of projects for different budget ranges, and we increasingly have a lot of solutions we can offer at the lower end of the budgetary spectrum. But typically, we are doing free consultations, but we are also selling, fairly large, sometimes fairly expensive systems that the economics work where we can balance that out. I don't know that they work if all you're selling is Sonos and flat panel mounts. I just don't see it. Right.
I mean, there is a way to do free consultations and sell product. That the business model definitely exists. But I do think that the advice that we offer, like if we're going to offer something that they take away, whether that's a list of things to buy, or some type of advice on what to do, I think there should be some type of compensation for that. I mean, I've always believed that, but there's definitely business models that support free consultations, and definitely markets that charging, even if it's minimal, charging a fee would be kind of tough to do. It's a different sales process altogether, and a different mental state to be in as a dealer. But it definitely can be done and is practiced.
I agree. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, I can't get an electrician to come to my house and step in the door without handing them a credit card and promising them $125, period. Like,
that's true.
They get $125 just to roll a truck out here and stare at me and say, I don't have the part. Like that is the...
That's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but it's true.
Yeah, we give away our time and our information and product for free all the time. And it's just another trade. It's just another service. And eventually, the parts that we're buying will be commoditized like they are with electricians, and our business models will all have to change to match, what is expected in the other service industries and other, plumbing and electrical and HVAC. I mean, they're all the same. You do not get them out to your house without paying the money. And I don't think that, I think that's something that could happen once our industry calms down, and becomes a little more standardized on the product that we're installing.
I agree. Well, another great episode, Seth. I think we'll wrap things up here. We're running out of time. Really enjoyed sitting down with you. Good to be back in the saddle here, and look forward to ramping things up. Gosh, we got Cedia on the horizon here a couple short months from now, and hopefully you'll be able to make it out there this year. I don't know if you've finalized your plans, but this is always a fun time of year and an exciting time of year in our industry, and I look forward to this summer and ramping up and looking forward to some of the big stuff we're sure to see out at Cedia.
I'm really excited about it. Should I announce if I'm going or not, or should we just start doing over and unders with Richard?
Let the suspense build a little bit.
All right. We'll see what we can do.
But anyways, we just want to thank everybody for listening. We really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed the show and you want to support our efforts to bring you more episodes like this, a couple of ways you can do that. The first one I'll mention is head over to HomeTech.fm/support. And there you can read about becoming a patron of the show. And that's a great way to support us financially. You can do that for as little as $1 a month. We've got a number of people that have stepped up and done that, and we truly appreciate all of our patrons taking the time and making that financial commitment to help us. It really means a lot. Very valuable feedback, and really, like I said, we would encourage more people to do that. If you can't, we totally understand. Another great way that you can support us would be to leave us a review on iTunes. That definitely helps more people find the show, and it would be a great way to help support HomeTech.fm.
Absolutely. Jason, it's good to have you back on the show this week. It's good to hear an answer to the questions I ask. So I'm looking forward to talking to you again next week, and thanks everybody for listening. Jason, I'll see you next week.
Sounds good, Seth. Take care.
They would reach over and do this. It's not working. My bell break? I'm going to have to cut this out then.
No, you gotta leave right. That in.
Now I'm going to cry.
Well, that would have been a bell, but...
Yeah, would have been a bell. For whatever reason, it's not working.